Now, on top of all this, we have a set of regulations. I mentioned them earlier, construction design management regulations. Now, this set of regulations originally came out, I think it was 1994 was the first set, but they got upgraded in 2007, and they last revamped in 2015. You don't need to know all the ins and outs of these regulations, but certainly there are key things which I'm going to point out which you do need. Now, this slide you've got in front of you now, it shows that these regulations apply right from thinking about building something to the design process. It applies to the planning process, so planning for health and safety, that is, the construction itself, commissioning. So you built something and now you're commissioning it, you're getting it ready for use. So you've got the commissioning side. And then also you've got to take into account people who are going to be using whatever it is that's just been built, and also takes into account future. It's the lifespan of the building, looking at alteration and even through demolition. It's quite a comprehensive set of regulations. There's reasons for why we have it, and I'll sort of come back to that in a moment. But yeah, so construction design management regulations, it's because construction industry has one of the worst safety records. So over the years, huge strides have been made to make it safer. And so these regulations, it's talking about health and safety at all these different parts of the project. So taking safety into account during the design and the planning of the construction and the building itself and the commissioning, taking health and safety into account during all these situations. There's a question mark. It says, just what is construction work? It does cover a wide area. It covers a wide area. Decorating. If you've got renovation going on, renovation includes. The funny one, he said demolition. That's the funny thing about construction. We think is building. Well, it is normally, but actually within the definition of construction work does include dismantling and demolition as well. Okay. Yeah, this is from the regulations. Carrying out of any building, civil engineering or engineering construction work. There's quite a list of what it actually includes. I'm not going to give you the full list, but there's plenty of it. Just incidentally, I hadn't mentioned this before, you might remember this. In the bottom right-hand corner, where you've got the yellow stars, that means it's in your handout. This information's in your handouts. Okay, so our construction work. Yeah, building something, construction, altering it, converting something, renovation of a structure. It's about repair, redecoration, maintenance, decommissioning, demolition. It's a wide range. Now, I don't think this one is in your handouts, but it says including cleaning, but only cleaning it involves high pressure water or abrasions or toxic or corrosive substances. So, for instance, we're not talking about cleaning as in doing the vacuum cleaning inside your building. We're talking about jet washing the outside of the building, cleaning the brickwork or concrete or whatever construction material the building's made of. So yeah, so all these things come under this overall definition of construction work. There's a lovely site. Safety is obviously a high priority there. Not. Okay. Now, I said a while ago, construction industry, has the highest number of fatalities. It's got one of the worst accident rates, and there's reasons for that, So I'm going to give you a question now. It says, of all the different industries in the UK, construction is responsible for the greatest number of fatalities and RIDDOR specified injuries. Remember I said RIDDOR, reporting of injuries, diseases, dangerous occurrences, regulations. In RIDDOR, there's a list of injuries, specified injuries, and if someone suffers one of those injuries at work, it has to be reported to the health and safety executive. There we go. So the climb. This was quite a big change in 2015. It put more emphasis on the client taking more responsibility for the project and staying in control. So the basic duties of the client, and these are all in your handouts. So far as is reasonably practical, construction work to be carried out without risks to health and safety. Now, although the client may not be doing the construction work, as part of the management of a project, they've got to make sure that things are being done to keep people safe. So there's a lot of cooperation needed with other parties on this. It's the client's duty to ensure that welfare facilities are provided. And so if you're having renovation projects in a multi-storey building, the chances are on every floor there's going to be toilets, welfare facilities. So then in that case, the client can say, well, the people doing the renovation work, you might allocate, like a particular set of toilets on a particular floor. And then if you've still got people working in the building while the renovation's going on, which is quite a common affair, then you might say to your own staff not to use those toilets. So they're reserved especially for the construction people, for the people doing the renovation. So the client has to ensure they're provided. When we get to the principal contractor, they also have duties regarding this, and I'll come back to that in a while. This is part of staying in control, reviewing the management arrangements throughout the project or as the project progresses. In the old days, it tended to be a client will want a project to be done, they'd appoint someone to take charge of it, and then they just wash their hands of it all until it was all finished. Can't do that now. The client has responsibilities. They've got to review the management arrangements. So this can be done through having regular meetings, with the contractor, with the principal contractor and other relevant parties. There might be a weekly meeting, it might be a daily meeting, depending on the situation. So reviewing the management arrangements, because throughout the project things change, so it's making sure those arrangements are kept up to date, and the client has the responsibility for ensuring that happens. Now we'll come back to this for a while, but yeah, pre-construction information, as soon as it's practicable. What it is, when you want a project to be done, now unless some companies have preferred contractors, they have a list of contractors, so if it involves particular work, they may already have an approved contractor to use. But say if we want to build a big chemical plant, it's going to, certain information needs to go out to the construction companies so they can decide if they want to put a tender in for the project, if they want to bid to build our chemical plant. So pre-construction information goes from the client out to all the relevant construction companies who may want to build a chemical plant, and we come back with a little thing on that in a while. So provide that pre-construction information. Ensuring the principal designer and principal contractor comply with their duties. So this is cooperation business here. Everybody needs to know what everybody else is doing and what their duties are under CDM as much as anything. So this is a two-way information going on here, two-way sort of cooperation. From a company point of view, if you're a company and you want someone to come in and build an extension or build another building for your company, then usually a company like that will have have over 5 employees, probably got a safety person, so the safety person would be aware of this. And so they get the duty to, the safety person will help their employer, as it were, to satisfy these duties under CDM. Now, health and safety files. I'll show you our safety file in a while. Health and safety files, these are requirement under CDM regulations. What it is, it's a file with records all about the building, the construction materials that we use, how to maintain it, the electric, securities, all sorts of things in there. The file stays with the building. It's been a requirement from CDM regulations since 1994, since the first set of regulations of CDM. And so all of us who work in buildings that were built since 1994 will have one of these safety files. And even buildings built before that, it's almost like a maintenance manual type thing. If you've got a project, excuse me, and if it's got more than one contractor, now by more than one contractor, it doesn't mean more than one person. It would mean more than one, like we could have a group of electricians, a group of tilers, a group of painters. If they're different companies, then sort of like they're different contractors. So more than one contractor, we have to do certain things. But as a client, we're saying whether commercial or domestic, ensure the work doesn't start until the construction plan is in place. The construction phase plan is a health and safety plan for how we're going to carry out this task, take into account health and safety. So as a client, not allowed a project to start until there is a health and safety plan in place for the construction part of the project, that is. As I say, the health and safety file, now for a big project like a building, it'd get quite a big file. But this is all the client's responsibility to make sure these things are done. Now, certain projects have to be notified to the health and safety executive. We called it an F10, a form number 10. Now, this changed considerably in 2015. Any project, now this is, remember, whether domestic or commercial, any project that's going to go for 30 days or more, and at the same time, at any point in those 30 days, or over those 30 days, have 20 or more people on site. So any project that's going to last 30 days or more, and at some point, like in that time, have 20 or more people on site. And even if it's only for 20 minutes, it still counts as 20 or more people on site. Then we have to let the HSE know about our projects. So they call them notifiable projects. Any project that's going to last 500 person days, that is, say, 10 people working for 50 days. Or if you like, 50 people working for 10 days. So we call those person days. So any project's going to last 500 person days, be notified to the health and safety executive with a form F10. Mostly nowadays, this is all done online. But it says all those days, the 30 days includes only the days where work is happening. So if you run your site from Monday to Friday, they don't do any work over the weekend, but you only include, that'd be 6 weeks, because you've got Monday to Friday is 5 days. So 5 days times 6 weeks, that's going to equal 30 days. So you don't include the days where there's no construction work. So the F10, in the old days, it was actually paperwork, and you'd fill out the form and then send it off to the HSE or fax it over to them. Nowadays, it's online reporting only. The only exception to that, and sometimes it does happen, when you get some of the older people around, the older construction-related people around, who might be just work on their own, they may not have, may not have a computer, may not have a printer. Ironically, then they can still do an online, or do a form, sorry, but it's got, just as long as it's got all the relevant information, that's the main thing. As long as it's got relevant information that's required on the F10. Now, this is the big change. Again, the client is responsible for doing that reporting. F10 is one thing, that's the initial notification to the HSE. It may be you've got a project you didn't think was going to go on for 30 days, but actually it does. So then when we know we're going to go over the 30 days, then we tell the HSE about it, as long as it's got 20 more people on site. From the point of view of before we actually appoint a contractor, there was that pre-construction information. This is another duty the client, usually along with a principal designer, if they've appointed one, will put together this information to be sent out. You've then got the construction phase plan, which is what the principal contractor, that's the company you've appointed to run your construction project. They're the principal contractors, so they're in charge of the construction phase, and so they have to put together a health and safety plan. During the construction phase, what we're doing about health and safety. And at the end of it all, you've got the health and safety file, which ends up, as I say, staying with the building. So it goes to the client and at the end, and then it stays at the building. The client for the F10. And this is just the starter. This is just a sample of the paperwork. It's just the very basics, the address. Where is this project? And it says there, is it initial notification? Is it an update to existing notification? The address of where the project's going on, and there's various things about who's the client, what's their address, who's the contact name, who's the principal designer, so there's quite a few details involved. The principal designer, we've got to have relevant skills, knowledge and experience. Now, this phrase comes out throughout CDM regulations. Whoever's involved in the construction project, so this includes principal designer, designers and contractors as well. Anyone involved in the project must have relevant skills, knowledge and experience. And so the principal designer can't just say yes to a project if you haven't got the relevant knowledge, because you might have a principal designer who's worked in one type of construction area, like they may not sort of have worked on a chemical plant, they might have worked on schools or houses or what have you. So, or a nuclear power plant, for instance, like they may have no knowledge of it, so they can't take on that job. So the principal designer is appointed by the client. Again, it's a common duty throughout CDM regulations. Report anything likely to endanger their own safety or that of other people. You'll find throughout these regulations that all the contractors involved have this sort of duty. Designer to plan, manage and monitor coordination of pre-construction phase of projects. I.e., before we've appointed our principal contractor, the principal designer has the safety responsibility, if you like. So it's with cooperation with the client as well. So the planning, the managing, and that's why it's the principal designer along with the client normally puts together the information for the pre-construction information. It's just about ensuring technical and organisational aspects of the project. It's making sure, as a designer who will obviously have knowledge of design, checking that sort of like the design is viable, but it can actually be done. So the technicalities of it. I mean, the organisational aspects of a project, like making sure things are done as they're supposed to be done, making sure the management of the project is done properly. So again, it's in conjunction with the client. And of course, once we've got our principal contractor on board, they're coming to this as well. So technical and organisational aspects. Just moving on from that, making sure this whole thing, it's obviously all safety related. So identifying, eliminating preferably, and if we can't eliminate, then controlling so far as is reasonably practicable, foreseeable risks. Not all risks are foreseeable, but mostly they are. A lot are. So it's making sure, we've looked at our project, we've looked at the various stages, we've looked at what's going on, we've looked at where the risks are, and making sure we've done something about it. So this is before the building is built. This is before well, it can be during the build project as well. But even just looking at the designs, looking at the plan of how we're going to go ahead with our project, any foreseeable risks. So one example, if you've got a multi-storey building being built, then your foreseeable risk is going to be the work at height. So through design, we might be able to reduce the amount of work at heights. One way they've done that nowadays, quite often when new builds go up, they put a staircase, they build the staircase in as soon as possible, as soon as reasonably practicable, so that rather than people having to, I don't know, abseil or what have you, like people can use the stairs to, rather than go up ladders and that, use a staircase. It's just one small example, like, so the designers can be looking into that. Now, you've got a principal designer and you might have a team of designers on a project. So the principal designer is basically in charge, if you like, ensuring the other designers comply with their duties of health and safety. And this whole thing, again, I said this earlier and I'll say it again and again, CDM, a lot of it is about cooperation between all parties involved. That's the client, that's the designers, that's the contractors, the principal contractors, the workers, etc. So our client decides they want to build something, they want something built. They've got a designer on board to help with that, we're calling the principal designer. They've sent out information to the various construction companies saying, would you like to put in a bid for this project? And eventually those bids come in, and then you look at who you want to use, and then you appoint your company you want to build your project. So that's going to be the principal contractor. And so the principal contractor, this is once we start building, the principal contractor is now in charge of safety, the overall responsibility. So it's the construction phase. So as we said a while ago, the client has a duty to make sure there's a construction phase plan in place before building starts, but it's the principal contractor that actually prepares the construction phase plan. And again, like I said before, cooperation, coordination of tasks and of contractors. So from the building stage onwards, it's the principal contractors in charge of all this, making sure, cooperation. So one of the problems we said earlier was about multiple skills, multiple trades going on at the same time. Now, I said to you about blocking off the staircase when having hot works going on up above that. which should never have happened. That was a lack of cooperation. That was a lack of coordination of tasks. So that was some years ago before this legislation came out, I will just say. But yeah, so the idea is the principal contractor will have a plan of what work's been done each day and sort of like taking safety into account. So it's making sure everyone cooperates and coordinates. So it's they're in charge of all the other contractors on site. Checking work is carried out without risk to health and safety. Supervision, definition of supervision is overseeing. So textbook definition, overseeing the work, overseeing what people are doing. So now in reality, a lot of people have the title supervisor, but quite often they're so busy working, doing what it is they've got to do in their job, they don't have a chance or time to properly supervise and oversee what their fellow staff are doing. So a non-working supervisor, they can walk miles a day around sites, checking that people are following the safety rules which are set by the principal contractor. Yeah, it's a great title to have, I must say, non-working supervisor. So that's one way of doing this, checking the work is carried out without risk to health and safety. Now, in construction, one of the issues, we said about death rates and that, there's enough workers die on construction sites, but also over the years, quite a few members of the public have died as well. And so one of the principal things, what it is, like, I'm not going to ask you whether you did this or not, but sometimes a construction site is like a playground for children. And that's unfortunately where some of the accidents have happened, where they climbed up on scaffolding or fallen down into trenches, etc. Quite a few accidents over the years, quite a few deaths as well to members of the public on sites. And so the principal contractor, before the building work starts, first thing they've got to do is secure the site. That's their legal duty under CDM regulations, securing the site. Now, the principal contractor, we said about the health and safety plan. The health and safety plan, during the construction phase, they're responsible for preparing that. But also, if you've got a safety plan, well, the whole thing, like having a safety policy, it's telling people about it, letting them know. So it's the principal contractor's got to provide information to everyone who comes on site. That could be visitors, but also the workers, anyone who's working on the construction site, the contractors, etc. So they've got to give them that information and then enforce the rules that they put in place. So that's again where your supervision comes in. And as always, with all these parties involved in construction, liaison, like cooperation, coordination between these various parties involved. Now, you may remember when we spoke about the client's responsibility, they said the client is responsible for ensuring welfare facilities are provided. Now, if it's a new build site, there is nothing else there, then the principal contractor, they're the ones with the legal duty to actually provide the facilities. So the principal contractor provides facilities. So that could be like portaloos, what have you, whatever's needed. And it's not just about toilets. We're talking, welfare facilities includes quite a lot of things, including like showers and changing rooms and all sorts. Again, depending on the nature of the project. So the principal contractor has the duty to provide the facilities, and the client has the duty to make sure they are there, they are provided. So again, it's this two-way responsibility. Everyone's checking everybody else to make sure things get done. The contractor must apply the principles of prevention. And it is basically that thing about, eliminating risk where we can, making things safe. We can't eliminate, reduce the risk, etc. The pre-construction information. For the sake, this is before we've appointed our contractor, our construction company. There's certain information we might want to send out to these companies to let them know what all this is about, what our project is. Would they like to put in a bid to build our project? Just saying, often this is done before we got a principal contractor because the contractors need that information in order to decide if they want to take on your project. So, for instance, you ask someone to build you want a nuclear power plant built. Oh, good luck on that one. But you want a nuclear, and I'm using an extreme case here. You want a nuclear power plant built. Well, you're not going to get sort of like two-man band, Fred Smith and his brother or whatever, to come and do that for you. You've got to send out relevant information to construction companies so they can look at it and say, we've got no experience of that, therefore we're not going to bid for it. You know, there's only so many companies can do those sort of projects. To build it, the principal contractor who knows about it, who's got experience in such things. So all this pre-construction information, it's any information we can send out to the construction companies so they can, you know, work out if they can take on the project or not. So there's all sorts of information that might be included. Some very basic stuff and some a bit more detailed. Limits of what can be done on that site. So there might be environmental issues to take into account. So anything we can tell the contractors about, we'll you know, like, let them know what we can. So it's got to be nice, clear and concise information, you know, what it is we want done, where is it, when by, you know, like, and anything else about sort of the nature of the job that we can let them know in advance so they can decide, you know, what's the purpose of our plant, what is our factory, what do we do, you know, so whether it's a flour mill, whether it's a food factory, whether it's a chemical plant. So it's all the details we can put in as much as possible. Okay, so we've done the F10, we've got the pre-construction information, and then we get the construction phase plan. Here we go, just put it this. Now, the construction phase plan. Now, remember, this is whether it's a domestic thing, something you're having done at home, or whether it's a commercial project, but more than one contractor involved, then this plan must be in place before any work gets done. So the construction phase plan includes quite a few things. For a start, description, what is it that's being done? What is our project? You get to think about the team members, that may be the names of the various contractors involved, including principal designer, designers, you know, like, so whoever's involved in the project, could be your supervisors are, etc. Remember, it's all health and safety related, so the aims and issues. Yeah, our aim is to complete this project without anybody getting hurt. I mean, things that may, you know, things we may need to take into account, so like, as you say, the chemicals on site, vehicles and plant, fuel storage. Like a lot of sites will have sort of like diesel tanks and that for the vehicles that are being used on site. And so you've got all sorts of things taken into account. So the health and safety aims and issues. What are the issues? It involves work at height, it involves work below ground, confined spaces. It could be, you know, confined spaces. We're talking about trenches and the very deep trenches and the risk from things like methane, you know, like various gases coming up from the ground. The rules in this construction site plan or phase plan, it will have the rules, which are safety rules that everyone has to abide by. And those rules, this is part of the principal contractor's responsibility, those rules will be displayed around the site as well and backed up with supervision and good management. In the plan itself, so again, this plan's got to be in place before we actually start building anything, but we're planning for safety in advance. So we're going to say, right, this is how we're going to cooperate with each other. We're going to have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, you know, depends on the type of nature of the project, you know. So you're set to have regular meetings, and you're in that phase plan that say who we expect to attend, not the names of individuals necessarily, but a representative of the client, representative of the principal designers, representative of other designers, the various groups involved, the various representatives and contractors working on site. So they set the rules in the plan. It sets basically in the plan. It's setting out what we're aiming to do for this whole of this project. And with good safety is a two-way thing. It's, you know, we talk about employer and employees, two-way communication, consultation. And so the safety plan is how we're going to involve the workers. And so we might have suggestion boxes. We might involve, you know, talking to have regular, you have things called toolbox talks. You know, we do a short subject chat for maybe 10, 15 minutes. So some way of involving the workers, because quite often it's the people doing the work that can see what the problems are. Because I mentioned it already, but in that phase plan, it would say about the site induction. Now, a site in Cambridge is quite a big site, was going on for a few years now. You've got an overall security level. I mean, within the first security barrier, you then get 3 separate projects going on, and they're all quite big projects run by different principal contractors. And so in the construction phase plan, it says about site induction. First, you will go to the site induction for the overall security. Then you go, once you're into your part of the site where you're visiting, you've got to do their site induction too. So it's how that's all controlled. We've got to plan for that in advance. And then your site-specific risks will be in the plan about how we're going to control work at height, how we're going to control hot works, work in confined spaces, the movement of vehicles. There's all sorts of things. It's quite the safety plan, the construction phase plan can be a large document. Again, depends on the bigger the project, the bigger the document. Okay. And then we got the safety file. As I said to you earlier, this is the one that stays with the building. Everybody involved, all the contractors involved will give their relevant information. Usually goes to the principal designer. They put together a book, and then at the end of the day, it all goes back to the client. You know, we've looked at selection of contractors, the sort of information we'd ask from contractors to make sure that we get the right contractor for the job. Because remember, if it does go wrong, there's a major or an accident which is possibly reportable to the HSE. Their questioning will be, okay, why did you select that contractor? So controlling contractors is one thing, but selecting the right contractor is something in the first place. Monitoring contractors. We get a contractor in, a way of monitoring a contractor. Just go and talk to him every now and again. You may get a contractor in to do some work within your company. One thing is the contractor might have given you brilliant paperwork, a great safety policy, wonderful risk assessments and method statements, or RAMs. You might have always wonderful stuff, all looks great. And then you find when they're on site, you might go and have a little look and see what's going on and find there are standards of appalling. There might be training cables everywhere. There may be sort of like damaged equipment. There may be unsafe practices. Maybe there's no PPE. There's all sorts of possibilities. So we have to, as we've got a responsibility as a client, we have to make sure that we keep an eye on our contractors. That doesn't mean stay standing there looking at them all the time. We just pop in every now and again, make sure they're okay. So that's part of what we've done today. I mean, CDM, the notifiable projects. The notifiable projects, the ones that sort of like are going to involve 30 or more days plus at the same time 20 or more people on site at any time in that time period. And sort of like the ones that go on for 500 person days. If you notify to the HSE. And then we looked at the main duties of the client, the principal contractor, the principal designer. And there's duties, we haven't done design, there's duties for the designers as well. There's a bit of information in your books there. And the records, it's about the F10 to let the HSE know about a project. The construction information or pre-construction, what we send out to the construction companies. And then we've got a construction phase plan, or if you like, construction phase health and safety plan, the CPP. And of course, at the end of it, the health and safety file.